Sairam, speaking on the role of women in the society, Bhagwan Sri Satya Sai Baba emphasized, and I quote, "If women are given due recognition and encouragement, they will shine with brilliance in all fields and will serve the house, the country, and the entire world gloriously, contributing to the welfare of the entire humanity." Unquote. True to his vision, here we have with us our alumnus, Dr. Venkata Sharda, who has excelled in the scientific field and is currently serving as Scientist F at the Center for Solar Energy Materials, ARCI, Hyderabad. I deem it my privilege to introduce the last speaker of the day, Dr. Sharda, to all of you. Dr. Sharda completed her graduation from the Department of Physics, Anandpur campus of Sri Satya Sai Institute of Higher Learning. Madam secured her postgraduate degree in physics from Sri Venkateswara University, Tirupati, and received her doctorate degree in applied chemistry from the University of Tokyo, Japan. Let me take you through her professional accomplishments. Madam worked as a lecturer in physics and electronics in Osmania University from the year 1993 to 1997. She was a JSPS postdoctoral fellow at the Faculty of Engineering, University of Tokyo between 2000 and 2002. She was also a JST postdoctoral researcher under Pre-Venture project at the University of Tokyo, Japan between 2002 and 2003. Madam served as Woman Scientist A under DST scheme between 2006 and 2009. At the Center for Solar Energy Materials, ARCI, Hyderabad, Madam served as Scientist D between 2009 and 2013, as Scientist E between 2013 and 2020. Recently, Madam was promoted as Scientist F at the same center. Madam has guided 2 PhD students at IIT Hyderabad and University of Hyderabad, co-guided 2 PhD students at the University of Tokyo, Japan, and is currently guiding 2 PhD students at NIT Warangal and IIT Hyderabad. She has also guided several projects of BTech and MTech students. In addition to all these, Madam has published 46 research papers in reputed national and international journals. She has presented her research work in many international conferences, besides contributing to many book chapters. Furthermore, Madam has 9 patents to her credit. Her areas of research interest include preparation of CIGS and CZTS based thin film solar cells by using electrodeposition technique, preparation of highly textured and twined copper foils by pulsed electrodeposition, electrochemical synthesis of nanostructured materials, graphene-based nanocomposites for energy conversion and storage applications, synthesis of graphene by electrochemical anodization, electrochemical synthesis of titanium dioxide-based nanostructured materials for photovoltaic and biomedical applications, synthesis and applications of conducting boron doped diamond thin films and microelectrodes, non-chrome based solar selective coatings for CSP applications, metal oxide based nanostructures for pseudocapacitor applications, and materials for biomedical applications. May I request Dr. Sharda to kindly take over the stage and enlighten us on the topic nanostructured materials by electrochemical routes for electrochemical energy storage applications. Madam Sharda.
Pranams at the lotus feet of Bhagavan. It gives me great pleasure to speak in front of the audience in this platform, especially because I'm an alumni of this institute and I've learned my basic sciences from here, from the Anandpur campus. And now I'm working at International Advanced Research Center for Powder Metallurgy and New Materials. The title for the presentation today for my talk is Nanostructured Materials by Electrochemical Routes for Energy Storage Applications. So you may be knowing that ARCI is the Autonomous Institute under the Department of Science and Technology, DST, with a unique mandate of translating basic research into technology and transfer it to Indian industry. So now with this mandate, as I said, I have started my basic sciences from here, from the Department of Physics as major and also Department of Chemistry and Mathematics. So ARCI consists of 11 centers of excellence where different types of research are being done, and I am working at the Center for Solar Energy Materials and also partially with the Center for Nanomaterials. And of course, we have collaborative projects with most of these centers as per the need comes. So today's topic, I'm mostly concentrating on the automotive and energy storage sector. Yeah. So now coming back to the role of science and technology and making it translational to society, you can see from this triangle is very important. You can see that the society demands and the science tries to solve the problems of society, and just by solving the problems at lab scale is not sufficient, and it has to go into technology. So the basic research and science combines with engineering and becomes the technology. And this technology is given to the society, and in turn, for further modification, again, there is a need of science to further modify the technologies. And now coming back to our energy sector, you can see over here, energy means we think mainly of electricity. But however, if you see over here, you will be surprised to see that 48% of the energy is used only for heating and cooling, including household or industrial or any other applications. 32% is used for transport applications, that is for automotive applications, and only 20% is used for electricity applications, both in household, official works, or anything. So now people are concentrating on the renewable energy sources like sunlight, wind, rain, tides, geothermal heat, biosources, other biosources, etc., etc. So now most used ones are solar energy and the wind energy. You can see over here, solar power is 11% and wind power is 31% just after the hydropower. However, for solar power and wind power, the main problem is it doesn't give a stable output throughout the day. If you see in case of solar power, it works only during day, and especially for silicon solar cells, it doesn't start as soon as the sun rises. It requires a particular intensity of photons to fall on the semiconducting materials to convert them into electricity. So effectively, silicon solar cells work from 11 to 3, whereas other newer technologies like thin film solar cells, including CIGS and CZTS, they almost start at about 8 o'clock and work until convert energy until 5:30 in the evening, and even under diffused light. So even on a cloudy day, they work. And even in case of wind power, it is same. Depending on the wind conditions, it works. So you can see over here, as I already mentioned, 174 petawatts of solar energy is generated from the thermonuclear fusion reactions at sun. However, only 47% of the sun photons reach the earth. And out of the photons that reach the earth, 3/4 of it goes into the ocean. So basically, we are left with very, very small amount of solar energy that is to be converted into electricity. So this energy is used, converted energy is, you can see over here, for very large scale applications like grid power and smaller applications like energizing or powering a house, and also for further smaller applications for automotive electronics, and even further smaller applications for you can see over here the backpack which contains a solar cell, and that can be charged, or that can be converted into electricity using the photons. And this is a thin film solar cell consisting of CIGS cell on flexible substrate, where even on a rainy day it can convert solar light into electrical energy, and this is useful mainly for the people who are traveling more. So now coming to the wind energy, you can see here there is a lot of process, and also, as I said, wind also is not, you can see in this plot, from first hour to the 24th hour, there are so many variations. These plots are taken for about 15 days, and each day gives in each color. You can see over here the wind is lesser at times, more at times, and depending on the wind conditions, the conversion of energy is also varying. So you cannot directly use this for the grid applications or directly giving it to the household applications. And also in case of solar energy, you can see on a cloudy day, the purple color map, there is so much of variation. And as I said, it is very less in the morning hours and very less again in the evening hours. So basically in the afternoon, it gives the maximum power. And that too on a cloudy day, it again gives lesser, as you can see in this plot. So now what is important is this converted energy has to be stored in some form or the other in order to be supplied again for all the applications. So energy storage is very, very important, especially for the renewable energy sources, when the renewable energy sources are used for conversion. You can see over here, without the storage system, the demand and the power that is coming out is very huge during the day, and it is very low and almost no for nights. Whereas when you have an energy storage system, this can be distributed even to the night. What is generated during the middle of the day can be distributed to the night time, and this can be used, and this should be giving the proper electricity. And how do you convert this solar, and how do you store this electrical energy? There are different ways of storing it, by electrolyzer or fuel cells as hydrogen storage, and most widely used are batteries and supercapacitors. So morning, you have heard a lecture on batteries, especially lithium ion batteries, which are most widely used both for grid applications and also for the automotive applications. In addition to all of us are using batteries. So all the mobile phones, all these mobile phones consist of lithium ion batteries. And we should know one thing, that all these lithium ion batteries are only imported or at the most assembled in India. None of these are made in India. So we are right now putting efforts at ARCI to make materials and also the cell assemblies as indigenous technology for the society. And another technology is supercapacitors, which I'll be speaking a little later. And these are the different types of batteries and electrochemical storage systems. And as I said, the widely used one is lithium-based battery. Of course, lead-acid-based battery is still used both for automotive applications and grid storage. And when I have gone to Benares, I have seen that most of these 7-seaters are run by lead-acid batteries. However, lead is a toxic metal, and you need to, and also the power output or the energy density and power density are very low for lead acid batteries compared to the lithium ion batteries. So most wanted battery right now is the lithium ion battery. And I will not be touching more into lithium ion battery because you have already heard in the morning. And the future batteries beyond lithium ion batteries are lithium sulfur batteries, sodium ion batteries, sodium sulfur batteries, and supercapacitors. Now, as mentioned in my title, nanostructures are very, very important for many of the applications, almost all the applications, and especially the energy storage applications. Also, the conversion applications require the nanostructured materials. And the advantages you can see in this diagram. What are all the advantages of these nanostructured materials? They give abundant active sites, efficient ion transport, elevated structure variation, etc., etc. And you can make nanostructures into different forms, and you will be surprised to know that each form of these nanostructures give different types of outputs. And this is just a gist of all the lithium the anodes and cathodes used for in the lithium-ion batteries. And you all know that last year the Nobel Prize in Chemistry is given to the inventors of lithium-ion batteries. Although it started long time ago, many decades ago, now it has been a mature technology and it has got Nobel Prize. And Professor John Goodenough, at the age of 96, he has received the Nobel Prize for the lithium-ion batteries. And as I mentioned, nanosize affects the performance of lithium-ion batteries. You can see over here, the diffusion length for lithium-ion is very, very important for the fast charge discharge process. When the material is a nanostructured materials, these become very small, and that improve the performance of the lithium ion batteries. And similar is the lithium sulfur battery. You can see now, why is lithium sulfur battery very important? Now, when you are using both anode and cathode as lithium composites, it becomes very expensive, and also the performance is lower. In order to improve the energy density and power density and the power output, we can go for lithium sulfur batteries, which is of course at research level and soon going to be becoming a technology. Although you can see over here, the theoretical energy density is 1675 not energy density, capacity is 1675 milliamp hour per gram, and the energy density is about 2500 watt hour per kg for lithium sulfur batteries. But practically, if you see, the problem is during the discharge, you can see over here several polysulfides, intermediate polysulfides are formed during the lithiation, that is discharge process at different potentials, and this is called, and they get dissolved into the electrolyte, and ultimately for the second cycle there is a lot of decrease in the output. So in order to decrease this is called a shuttle effect. In order to decrease this, you have to play or engineer. You already know sulfur is a good cathode, and you already know that it is facing these problems. So what is the next important part is to engineer the cathode part. So to engineer the cathode part, you have to choose the substrate and also the sulfur nanoparticles in such a way that you can bring out best performance. And for that, we have used electrodeposition methods. Of course, several methods are used. However, people are finding that these methods are not able to give it is giving best performance in the first few cycles, but however, it is fading with each cycle. So in order to improve the performance, we have to come to a particular process. For any technology, the process for making these nanomaterials or filling the nanostructures is very, very important. And among the other methods, the electrodeposition process, which I have been working since last 2 decades probably, is the very viable method. It is cost effective and also has plenty of parameters that can be changed just at normal ambient laboratory conditions. And the first, see, all of us have studied in intermediate itself. Electrodeposition is nothing but you put an anode and a cathode and an electrolyte with salt that is to be deposited, the metal that is to be deposited. And if you apply some external electricity, the metal gets deposited onto the cathode. However, in order to get these nanostructures and also to get exactly what loading you want, you can modify this technique to an extent using pulsed electrodeposition and pulse reverse electrodeposition. That is, for a few milliseconds, you will be supplying the current and immediately you will be switching off for a few milliseconds so that there is time for this material that is already deposited to become stress-free and also arrange itself on the cathode. Another advantage with the electrodeposition is you can see this silver, this kettle over here. So this is plated with silver by using electrodeposition. So the most advantageous part of this electrodeposition is that it consists of so many curves, but still the uniformity is very much well maintained during the electrodeposition. That is what is required for most of the porous material deposition on porous materials, especially the porous carbon, which is the substrate for the both anode and cathode deposition. And another advantage, you can see the corner of on the right side, that nanoparticles of platinum could be deposited very well organized on a conducting diamond electrode by using pulsed electrode deposition method, whereas the preliminary DC deposition has given agglomerated deposit. So depending on the necessity, we can change the process of electrode deposition. And the first application we have applied this electrode deposition for the energy storage applications is this is done by one student, Mr. Harimohan, who has completed now, Dr. Harimohan. He has completed his PhD and moved to Germany. And with him, what I have done is I have quoted, so this is for the anode. I was speaking about the cathode previously. Now, anode is also a very important part of the energy storage device. Tin is used as anode in place of lithium, and tin nanostructures are deposited by electrode deposition. You can see the FESEM images of the porous structure that is formed by using tin electrolyte. And in order to increase the conductivity of tin is very useful for this anode as anode material in the lithium sulfur batteries, because it has again very high efficiency and high theoretical capacitance. And this can be used in place of lithium in order to make it more user friendly. And in order to increase the conductivity of this tin, we have again modified with graphene oxide, reduced graphene oxide, in order to both improve the conductivity and also make it a nanostructured material. And the FESEM shows the graphene sheets in the metallic tin structure. And we have used Raman spectroscopy to confirm that graphene, the exfoliation has formed graphene, and the graphene is also made in-house. We have not taken the commercial one. You can see over here, again by the electrochemical exfoliation method, where we could make few grams of graphene to be put into the electrolyte, and you can see that it shows the graphene structure with the 2D band at 2688, that is below 2700, which shows that it is a graphene structure with less number of layers. And also from the TEM and FESEM images, you can see that it is a good quality graphene. And because I'm speaking about graphene recently has many applications. What is covered in this yellow box is for the energy storage applications, in order to give efficient, cheaper and sustainable batteries. And the next work we have done is we have used jute stick, which is a bio-waste material. These jute sticks are available mostly as waste material after they take the fiber in most of the coastal Indian places like Andhra Pradesh and West Bengal. And Dr. Nanaji, who has recently completed his PhD from IIT Madras, he's also an alumni of Prasanthi Nilayam campus. He has done his, I think, most of his education until his MSc was done at Prasanthi Nilayam. And he has done all this work. And you can see over here, this jute carbon is prepared by Mr. Nanaji, and then Mr. Harimohan has introduced sulfur into this porous carbon. And here the introduction of sulfur nanoparticles into this porous carbon, and the pore size of carbon is also very important. You can see over here that it gives a very stable specific capacity even after 300 cycles with a value of 400 milliamp hour per gram. And we have demonstrated the working of coin cell by lighting LEDs and also running a fan by using this cell. And so another material that is bio-waste used is the neem leaves, which are fallen from the tree, are collected, and these are made into carbon material, porous carbon material, and made into a lithium sulfur battery, which has again given 506 milliamp per gram in 200 after 200 cycles, and has a very good stability. So it is proven that sulfur material, when we can bring the optimum loading of sulfur into the pore size, the carbon with pore size, which is in the meso or microporous structure, can give best results. And next material that is coming up, or Of course, sodium sulfur batteries have been used since almost 2 decades. However, the sodium sulfur batteries that are used, they are already commercialized and widely used. And NGK, a company from Japan, has already commercialized it and also used widely for mainly the grid applications. Lithium ion battery and lithium sulfur batteries can be used for the automotive applications and the other portable smaller scale applications, whereas sodium sulfur batteries can be used for grid applications, all the stationary applications. And the most important advantage of sodium sulfur battery is that it is highly abundant on Earth and very low cost. You can see in this graphs that the cost of the sodium metal is very, very low compared to that of lithium. And also the cost of sulfur is very low. Whereas the abundance of sodium is much higher compared to that of lithium. And since many of the groups and companies are working with the lithium ion and lithium sulfur batteries, a day comes when there will be a deficiency of lithium. And in case of India especially, the main problem is that we have to import lithium. We do not have the sources of lithium in India, and we have to import from the other countries. And this makes the technology very expensive. So we have to find a way where we can make our own indigenous technology, and with the sodium and sulfur available in India, we can go ahead with the technology of sodium sulfur battery. But the problem with sodium sulfur battery with high temperature, this is operated at 300 degrees Celsius, and it has many problems because of operation at high temperature, and also the cost effectiveness is very low. So although it is very stable. So now we have to move on for how to minimize the cost again in making the sodium sulfur batteries. So the operation of sodium sulfur battery is the anode and cathode. The high temperature sodium sulfur batteries use anode and cathode in the form of molten liquid, and a solid electrolyte of beta alumina is used between the two, and these ions, sodium ions, diffuse back and forth during discharge and charge process. Again, another problem with this high temperature batteries is that it produces plenty of polysulfides, same in the case as in the case of lithium sulfur batteries. And these high order sodium sulfur polysulfides, which are formed during the discharge process, deteriorate the performance of sodium by forming dendritic structures, and this has to be controlled by using proper anode and also the cathode sulfur. So as mentioned in the case of lithium sulfur batteries, here also you have to take proper care of sulfur and as cathode, and in addition also we need to find more types of anodes for the sodium sulfur batteries. So these are all the challenges for the room temperature sodium sulfur batteries, where the low conductivity of electrolyte and electrode, and shuttle mechanism, as I mentioned, formation of polysulfides and their dissolution into the electrolytes, which causes most of the problems, and dendrite formation of the anode. And these are all the other minor problems with the sodium sulfur batteries. So now we have very recently started working on, so this is again a future technology on sodium sulfur batteries. Right now we are working on the sulfur incorporation into the porous structures, and also using other oxides so that it can give a better performance. And also the anode part. So in case of sodium sulfur batteries, mainly your sodium ingots are used as anodes. But as I said, with cycle life, with different or very few number of cycles, the dissolution of these polysulfides and forming dendrites along, forming polysulfides along with sodium, and also forming dendrites of sodium at the interface decreases the performance of the battery. And in order to decrease that, you can use the alloys of sodium antimony, sodium tin antimony alloys, so that this problem will be solved. And so here you can see this is the anode that can be prepared. This is the futuristic battery. You can make a porous tin antimony structure and introduce sodium into this to be used as anode, and also you can use mesoporous carbon and microporous carbon structures to introduce enough sufficient loading of sulfur into these carbon structures in order to get the best performance of the sodium sulfur batteries. And we have already started working on the nanostructured carbon into the to introduce the sulfur into these structures. And the other form of energy storage devices is high power, by using high power nanomaterials is the application for supercapacitors. So the main difference between energy, the batteries and supercapacitors is that in batteries, the energy density is high, whereas power density is low. Whereas in supercapacitors, the energy density is low. It has very high power density. So it very quickly charges and discharges. You can see over here in the plot on the left side, rechargeable batteries. They sustain for very long time, although the energy density is low. Whereas in case of they give very high energy but sustain for a very, very short time, and it needs very frequent charging and discharging of the storage system. However, this storage system can be used for the metro type of buses and other power electronic applications and start, stop, plug, etc. So now you can, on the right side, you can see the plot where it shows the energy, specific energy and specific power of lithium-ion battery and symmetric and hybrid supercapacitors. You can see over here that the symmetric supercapacitors show highest power and lowest energy density. And in order to maintain both energy density and power density, you can make use of pseudo capacitors, which are the latest addition to the supercapacitor family. So the supercapacitors are now of two types. One is EDLC, which is the commonly used supercapacitor, and the latest addition is the pseudo capacitor, where metal oxides are used in order to have some Faradaic reaction. So here the charge storage in the EDLC is only electrostatically done, whereas in case of pseudocapacitors, it is an electrochemical charge storage technique. In EDLC, we use mostly the activated carbon, porous carbons, etc. Whereas here in pseudocapacitors, you can use most of the metal oxides, conducting polymers, etc. And the hybrid capacitors can be made as combinations of both these supercapacitors. Now, I just mentioned, so the charge storage system in EDLC is just with the electrostatic, whereas you can see over here that because of the redox couple that is formed or oxidation reduction reactions, the capacity enormously increases, which also helps in increasing the energy density of these capacitor systems. So these are all the different types of capacitors, and as I already mentioned, it can be used in transport like city buses in the city, where every 3 or 2 kilometers there is a bus stop, and before the passengers get out and get in, it can be charged in few seconds and can run for those 3-4 kilometers. And several countries are already using these supercapacitors. And this is again the work of Dr. Nanaji, who has made these porous carbon structures and activated the carbon to look like, to obtain a graphene-like structured carbon. And you can see over here from the Raman. Raman is the best characterization method to see the quality of graphene or any carbon structure. And you can see over here from the very small D band and also large intensity of the G band, and the 2D band almost half the size of the G band, showing that there are very well ordered fuel-aid graphene structures available or obtained from the activated carbon that is processed from the waste jute stick. And this process is upscaled by him along with our other group members, and you can see long sheet of this flexible carbon substrate. And EDLC capacitor is made by using this carbon substrate, and you can see over here from the biowaste, from the carbon made from the biowaste, the performance is much better even compared to the commercial ones available. And this is demonstrated at lab scale, and you can see that kilograms of this carbon could be made, and so that's how it is upscaled, which is in line with the mandate of ARCI. And right now, last year, again, Dr. Nanaji has very major role in establishing this this lab pilot line at ARCI for the large scale production of the jelly rolls and ultimately the EDLC supercapacitors. And you can see over here the bottom corner on the right side that ARCI could successfully make a supercapacitor, which is almost giving this almost similar performance as that of Maxwell device, which is the most widely used commercial supercapacitor all over the world. And so now moving on to the next part of the supercapacitors. Pseudocapacitors, as I said, are gaining importance recently, and just with one material, Maxwell has already commercialized these pseudocapacitors. And as I said, the advantage of these pseudocapacitors is that it gives very high energy density compared to that of EDLC because of the small amount of nanostructured metal oxide that is deposited on porous carbon. Again, we have used electrodeposition for the preparation of these nanostructures. And in addition, this work is done by Ms. Samhita. Again, I'm proud to say that she is also an alumni of Anantapur campus, and she is doing PhD with me. She is registered at IIT Hyderabad. Of course, she is a research scholar at ARCI, and she is working under me. And she has made these electrodes, and she has shown that by creating the oxygen vacancies into the electrodeposited nanostructures of nickel cobalt oxide, which is a transition metal oxide and gives the highest energy density and specific capacity among the metal oxide materials, pseudocapacitors. And you can see over here from the cyclic voltammogram that the performance by creating few oxygen vacancies has improved much more, and the charge discharge profiles show the improvement in the performance. And this material has retained almost 89% of the initial capacitance after 10,000 cycles, and it has resulted in this is for the half cell measurements. And with these encouraging results, she has made full cell by using the previous carbon that I was mentioning, the carbon that is used, that is made from the waste juiced sticks. And you can see over here, this asymmetric capacitor with the increase in the potential window, and it has shown a very good performance and cycle stability. And a coin cell is made by using this pseudocapacitor, and she could light an LED and also run a fan for several seconds. And this has shown, as you can see over here, the cycle stability is very good. And we are now in the process of upscaling this process, and this is recently published in Batteries and Supercaps by her. And next most important material, as I said, Maxwell has commercialized only one type of pseudocapacitor by using MnO2 based electrode material. And so here it's made as an asymmetric supercapacitor by Maxwell. One side an activated carbon material is used, and the other electrode is the MnO2 carbon composite. Again, I was mentioning that you can improve the quality of deposition by using pulsed electrodeposition. But however, in some of the processes, you can see that direct current deposition performs better, especially when you need very good porous nanostructures, because there is a very high current that is being given continuously. You can make nanostructures where during the deposition, the hydrogen bubbles are formed, or in anodic deposition, the oxygen bubbles are formed, and these create the nanostructures. But by sitting for few seconds, where they escape after the deposition and leave the nanostructures. You can see over here, and here by using direct current deposition, it has given much better cyclic voltammetric performance, and also the specific capacitance obtained is very stable for 10,000 cycles. It has retained 88%. and also the specific capacitance is very high. And now again we have made the full cell by using commercial carbon electrode as the positive electrode and as the counter electrode, and MnO2 prepared by direct current deposition as the main working electrode. And you can see over here that the performance is very good. And this is the Ragone plot that is showing the comparison of our present work compared to the reported work, and it is very good compared to the reported ones. And this we are soon going to submit for publication. And again, a coin cell is made and tested for lighting a lamp. And this is the data what I was mentioning previously with our results. And finally, see, previously what we have used is one carbon electrode and the one metal oxide electrode and prepared an estimated capacitor. And now here, a step further she has gone and prepared all electrode deposited, all metal, like both metal oxide or metal sulfide, metal based, metal composite based pseudo capacitor by using nickel cobalt sulfide as one electrode and iron oxide as the other electrode in order to further improve the performance of this asymmetric pseudo capacitor. And you can see over here that very uniform distribution of each of the elements you can see from the EDS results. And also the XRD results show that the oxide phases are formed. And this is used for the advantage of using these metal oxide based electrodes on both the sides is that first is it increases the potential window, and through the potential window it has very high output. And as you can see over here from the cyclic voltammetric behavior of the pseudocapacitor. And you can see over here the charge discharge curves, and also it has retained 78% after 10,000 cycles. And this is a very good output that we have achieved, and this is going to be a breakthrough for the pseudocapacitors with very high energy. This is expected to be achieving very high energy density and a wide potential window. And throughout the potential window, it gives a very good performance. And now this is all about the energy storage applications. And with respected Vice Chancellor speaking about the COVID-19 application. So we are working in a particular field, but when necessity comes, we have to slightly tune to the requirements of the country and the city and the place around us. And so we have quickly worked on this UVC-based technologies for fighting against the COVID-19. And during the lockdown in the month of April, we have designed these three apparatus, trolley for the medical applications. This has been made possible by collaborating with University of Hyderabad and McKinsey Industries, which is based in Hyderabad. And this is used now in several hospitals. The performance testing for the COVID-19 is done at ESI at Hyderabad. And this is another for the cabinet for the laboratories and also for the hospitals, where they can very quickly, within few minutes, disinfect the lab coats, the batteries, and also the students who are using the different items in the small accessories in the laboratory can disinfect them quickly, and can be used by the other researchers. And another one, the latest one is conveyor for baggage disinfection, which can be used in airports and the commercial complexes. This we have made in collaboration with Vehan Technologies, which is based in Delhi, and they have already exported to different countries this product, and is being used for the disinfection of COVID-19 at commercial places and also at the airports. And another one related to chemistry, what we have done is we have quickly made a liquid that can be used for disinfecting the surfaces. Of course, you all must have read in the news that the sodium hypochlorite is used, and several chambers are kept all over in the market at different places at the entrances. However, it is found that sodium hypochlorite is very toxic for human beings and the skin. However, what we have made is hypochlorous acid, which is useful in killing the virus and bacteria, but is very friendly with human skin and also our lungs, because it is used at only 200 ppm level. And again, we have collaborated with this industry and quickly made these and commercialized it. So these are the works that we have done during the lockdown period, where we could not directly work in the labs. And then and during this period itself, we have got a nanomission project in collaboration with CCMB and Resil Chemicals. We are working in order to make masks by electrolysis deposition of copper and silver onto mask and TPEs for the use of, again, the general public, and also mainly for the doctors and medical practitioners who need not use a different mask every few hours. So then, since there was a lot of discussion on biomedical applications, I'm just introducing just 2 or 3 slides for you. What Dr. Jitendra Kumar Sharma was speaking is that we do not have many technologies. We are importing almost all the technologies from abroad and using it in India, although the necessity in India for biomedical applications is very, very high. So a year ago, we have started working on few of the biodegradable and normal implants. Here, this is a biodegradable implant which can be used either as a stent or as a screw, which slowly dissolves in the body itself, because some of the medically coated these stents need not be used for several years, and also some of the small screws and small plates where there is a small problem in the bone can be slowly dissolved into the body itself, which with which we can avoid the second surgery and also stay safe. So now we have to use bio-friendly materials for these, and we are working on the iron manganese alloys as biodegradable implants, and this is in the process. And the other one, we have started working with Sri Chitra Tirunal Institute of Medical Technology, is again for the stents. They have submitted the tubes, which by using the laser cutting technology, laser machining technology, we could make into the stent shape. And what the problem immediately after the machining is that the edges are very sharp, so we cannot introduce this into the body directly. So now what we have done is we have used the electrodeposition method, anodization or electro-polishing method to make it. You can see in the bottom, the as prepared, as machined stent and the electro-polished stent. The edges are quite smoothened, and also the free particles on the surface have disappeared, which is making it ready for the usage. And this is being tested at Sri Chitra Tirunal Institute of Medical Technology now. And the other one is the generally used stents are made of cobalt chromium alloy. However, sometimes in some people it creates problems by corrosion. So a coating of TIN is made on this cobalt chromium stents. Again, this is asked by Sri Chitra Tirunal, and we have done the coating. ARCI is known for different materials technologies, including coating, powder metallurgy, and non-vacuum methods of coatings. And we have done this and supplied about 12 stents to Sri Chitra Tirunal Institute, where they are doing the animal test now, and they expect that the results will be coming out soon. So we have started working even in the this field, which is the utmost importance for Indian society in India. And as I mentioned in the beginning, the government labs or universities have to start with an innovation, and then the gap should between the innovation and the invention and innovation should not die down in the middle and has to come into technology. So this is for this we are working, all of us at ARCI, and these are the two groups which I mentioned in the beginning. The group from research group from Center for Solar Energy Materials. You can see over here Ms. Samhita, who has done all the pseudo capacitance work, and Dr. Nanaji, who is from Center for Nanomaterials, who worked on the supercapacitor applications with nanocarbon. And I would like to acknowledge the TRC project, which is funding ARCI for doing all these energy storage related research, and our director, Dr. G. Padmanabham, Associate Director, Tata Narsingha Rao, team leaders of Center for Nanomaterials and Solar Energy Materials, the senior scientist, Dr. Anandan, and our collaborator at IIT Hyderabad, Dr. Martha, who is the internal guide of Ms. Samhita, and my colleagues and students who have worked with me for achieving all these results. Thank you very much. I am done. And lakhs of mobile phones especially are used all over the world, and any new model comes, a mobile phone is changed, isn't it? And the battery also is thrown away, and this is the biggest problem now existing for the lithium-ion batteries, how to obtain the lithium back. And also now we are collaborating with ARCI has started collaborating with different institutes in India itself and abroad to find ways to get the lithium back from the used lithium-ion batteries, and which can be used again for further processing of lithium-ion batteries. This process has started already, actually.
Yes, ma'am. Next question. In electrode deposition method, what is the stability of the electroactive material? How does it affect cyclability of batteries?
The cyclability of batteries is material dependent. The process dependence in electrodeposition is that the cyclability improves because we can, for example, I have already mentioned in lithium sulfur batteries that if you have a very good porosity, that is in the meso to micro order porosity into the carbon, and if we can very selectively put sulfur into this mesoporous carbon and with good loading, then that gives a very good cycle performance. And compared to any other chemical or any other coating method, electrodeposition is the best method, because by using the pulse electrodeposition, the nanoparticles or micron-sized nanoparticles, in this case, nanoparticles of sulfur can selectively deposited onto the inner surfaces also of the porous carbon, and that gives a very high performance. And also the polysulfide formation is very, polysulfide formation of higher order, although forms into these pores of carbon, doesn't come into the electrolyte and dissolve. It forms, but it stays there. So during charging again, the reaction is backward, and you again have sulfur after the complete charging. So this electrodeposition helps in keeping the polysulfide within the pore itself, so that it doesn't dissolve into the electrolyte and cause the shuttling effect. That is one major advantage of electrodeposition for the lithium sulfur batteries.
Okay, ma'am. The next question. Disposability is a major challenge for lithium-ion batteries due to their flammability. Is this challenge faced in sodium-ion batteries and sodium-sulfur batteries too? Is there a way?
Yes, of course, it is there, but not to the extent of lithium. And yes, it is there to an extent at high temperature sodium sulfur batteries, but not at room temperature sodium sulfur batteries.
Okay, ma'am.
Actually, with the high temperature sodium sulfur batteries, that is a major problem. That because it is maintained, the molten salts are maintained at very high temperatures, there is always a flammability of this material. And in fact, in Japan, in NGK, there was a very major fire accident because of this high temperature batteries that are used for grid energy storage. And since then, the work on room temperature sodium sulfur batteries has accelerated so much, so that we can make use of sodium sulfur batteries at room temperature itself.
Okay, ma'am. And the last question for the day. What are the challenges faced during solid solution tin antimony formation? Do parent phases segregate? How do you probe dynamics of sodium and lithium ions in solid solution?
So initially, as I said, we will be depositing, this is a future work actually. This is a very promising material, so I mentioned. this tin and antimony, of course, we have done few depositions, tin and antimony together few years ago, but we have not progressed with the sodium sulfur batteries. Now we have started to do that. So by optimizing the deposition potential and also the pulse parameters, you can have the right composition of tin and antimony first. Into the tin and antimony, you can again use an electroplating method. By using sodium salts into the electrolyte and do by a very thin layer of deposition and stripping, so that it can give a very uniform deposition into the pores of sodium, tin antimony nanostructures, so that the sodium can be incorporated into the nanopore structure of tin and antimony.
Thank you, Dr. Sharda, for sparing your time for delivering such an informative talk and clearing queries of all our students and faculty here. Thank you so much. We look forward to many such interactions in the future. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, I have visited several times to our institute during, I think, even before last year, I have come to physics department. And of course, as I said, Dr. Nanaji and Ms. Samhita, who are the alumni of our institute, are working, and several more students are also working. And I also look for some positive collaboration between our institutes so that we can, as we have been discussing the whole day, work for a technology, indigenous technology.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And I would like to thank all my teachers who taught me during my intermediate and BSc, especially Radha madam, Komalama madam, all chemistry lecturers, math, everyone, all my lecturers, and all my juniors who are working as the faculty over there. Thank you, Sai Ram.